9 signs your mind is evolving. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that has nothing to do with how much sleep you got. It shows up after conversations that felt hollow, after days that looked productive from the outside, but left you with this strange, quiet sense of having been somewhere you no longer belong. You drive home, or you sit with your coffee, and something in you just doesn't settle the way it used to. If you know that feeling, there is something worth understanding about what it means. A lot of people who experience this get told they are overthinking, that they are too sensitive, too picky, too much in their own heads. The world tends to treat emotional restlessness as a problem to be solved, a symptom of anxiety, dissatisfaction, or ingratitude. But what if that interpretation is simply wrong? What if what gets labeled as restlessness is actually something closer to growth, the uncomfortable, invisible process of a mind reorganizing itself at a fundamental level? What we are really talking about here are the signs that your mind is evolving, not in a self-help sense, not as a compliment, but in a precise psychological sense. The brain, under certain conditions, genuinely restructures itself, and when that is happening, it does not feel like progress. It feels like disruption. Neuroscientists use a term called neuroplasticity to describe the brain's capacity to physically rewire in response to new information, new experiences, and sustained reflection. What is less discussed is what that process feels like from the inside, because the research, including work from developmental psychologist Robert Kegan on adult meaning-making, suggests that genuine psychological evolution is almost always preceded by a period of internal incoherence. The old maps stop working before the new ones form. That gap, that disorientation, is not dysfunction, it is the process. One of the earliest signs of this happening is a shift in what bothers you. Things that used to slide off you now snag. You notice contradictions in people's behavior that you would have previously excused without thinking. You find certain conversations draining in a way that's hard to explain, not because the people are bad, but because something about the exchange feels small. This heightened sensitivity is not fragility. It reflects what researchers call increased cognitive complexity, the capacity to hold more variables, more nuance, more tensions simultaneously. The mind has expanded its resolution. More data comes in, more of it registers. A second sign is that solitude starts feeling necessary rather than optional. Introverts have always known this, but this is different. People who genuinely thrive in social environments start noticing they need more time alone, not to recover, but to think, to process. Psychologist Ester Buchholz spent years arguing that solitude is not the absence of connection, but a developmental need in its own right. When the mind is reorganizing, it requires uninterrupted interior space to do it. The pull toward quiet is not withdrawal, it is maintenance. Then there is the experience of old certainties loosening, beliefs you held without question about how the world works, about your own identity, about what you want, begin to feel less solid. This can feel frightening, even destabilizing. But what developmental research consistently shows is that identity rigidity and psychological maturity are inversely related. The more secure a person's sense of self actually becomes, the less they need their beliefs to be fixed and defended. The loosening is not collapse, it is opening. A fourth sign is that your relationship to conflict changes. Not that you become more confrontational, often the opposite, but the old strategies stop working. You find you can no longer pretend to agree when you don't. You find certain silences cost you more than they used to. This happens because the nervous system, as it matures, becomes more sensitive to inauthenticity, including its own. The body registers the gap between what is said and what is true as a kind of low-grade stress. Some researchers connect this to the insula and anterior cingulate cortex, regions involved in self-awareness and social pain. The discomfort is neurological. It is the system recalibrating. A fifth sign is that your compassion becomes more complicated. You find yourself understanding people you used to judge, and sometimes judging people you used to admire. Perspective taking expands, but that expansion is not always comfortable. Psychologist Mark Davis's work on empathy shows that as cognitive empathy grows, the ability to genuinely model another person's inner world, the emotional weight of others' experiences can increase too. Greater understanding does not always mean greater ease. Sometimes it means carrying more. A sixth sign is that your tolerance for performance, your own and other people's, quietly drops. The energy required to perform certainty when you feel doubt, or enthusiasm when you feel tired, or agreement when you disagree starts to feel unsustainable. This is not cynicism, it's authenticity pressure, the psyche's growing insistence on alignment between inner experience and outer expression. Brené Brown's research on vulnerability, whatever your relationship to the cultural conversation around it, is pointing at something real neurologically. Sustained inauthenticity is metabolically expensive. Here's the part that tends to surprise people. A seventh sign is a renewed sensitivity to beauty. Small things start registering: a quality of light, a phrase in a book, a moment of unexpected kindness. This happens because an evolving mind is, among other things, becoming more present. The anterior default mode network, associated with rumination and planning, quiets slightly as attention becomes more grounded in direct experience. The world does not become more beautiful, you simply become more able to notice it. An eighth sign is that you become slower to conclude. You find yourself sitting with questions longer, resisting the pressure to resolve ambiguity prematurely. This can look like indecision to people who knew an earlier version of you. But research on wisdom, including work from Monica Ardelt, consistently identifies tolerance of ambiguity as one of its core components. The willingness to not know is not weakness. It is a marker of cognitive maturity. And the ninth sign, perhaps the quietest one, is that other people's opinions of you start affecting you differently. Not that they stop mattering entirely, but their weight shifts. The need for external validation loosens its grip, slowly and unevenly, and something else takes its place, a more internal reference point. Psychologists call this locus of identity. When it moves inward, the outside noise doesn't disappear, it just no longer has the same authority. None of this is a measure of worth. People evolve differently, on different timelines, shaped by entirely different conditions. Someone who never experiences any of this is not lesser. They may simply be stable in ways that carry their own kind of intelligence. And someone in the middle of all of this is not more enlightened. They are in a specific kind of discomfort that serves a specific kind of function. If this resonates, if some part of you recognized itself in these descriptions, it's probably because you're in the middle of something, not at the end of it. The recognition itself is part of the process. The mind noticing its own restructuring is one of the stranger, more quietly remarkable things it can do. There's more to this. There are patterns in how people emerge from this kind of internal reorganization, what changes on the other side, and what tends to stay the same. That's worth sitting with if you're in the middle of it now.